Hello and welcome to another episode of the Ring Weekly Catch-Up. Berth here with Jack 13 Morris. Have a bit of a recap of what happened at the weekend, and we're going to start off with the Terence Crawford fight against Gamboa. Stoppage for Crawford. I think it was the 10th round he stopped him in. What do you think of that fight?
I only really see the highlights, to be honest. I would, before the fight, I couldn't pick a winner, to be totally honest with you.
I did pick Crawford because simply because he just was so much bigger than the other kid. But you could see why the other lad's done so well at the lighter weight, featherweight boxing. It's a lightweight fight. Gamboa very, very strong. Crawford got caught in the final round. Actually, the 9th round, I think he sucked him in, actually. I tell a lie. But I don't really want to talk about the fight as such. I want to talk about something completely different, which is why has Larry Merchant still got a job? I've never heard a bigger load of old bollocks in my life than that man was talking, and he's a top flight commentator on professional boxing. It was just pony. Colonel Bob Sheridan, I've never known anything like it. They've got some South American chica who's helping her as well. Now, I know that this is the syndicated international programming that they're actually, because they don't work directly for HBO. I think Malignaggi does the HBO telecast now to America, to the United States audience. But what are these two people still doing in their job? I mean, what's your opinion?
I don't know. I think they've got loyalty towards Larry, I think.
But he sounds like he's punch drunk. He talks, and all of a sudden he'll trail up into nothing. He started a sentence during that fight the other day and didn't even bother finishing it.
I think he forgets what he's going to say.
He forgets what he's going to say. Well, you've seen him when he's doing a post-fight interview. He's holding on to his ear. He's talking. He's like talking to a guy over there. The boxer's standing there. He's not even communicating with him. And the sentence is some. What do you think? And it's like, for God's sake, get the question out, ask the lad a question, or just basically get someone else involved who can actually string a sentence together, because the man must be about 105 now. I think it's about time to call day on it, actually, Larry, with the greatest deal of respect. Let's go back to Britain then. I know you've got a couple of points you want to make about the weekend's fights, so should we go to the Rickster first? Who lost another fight.
Yeah.
I'll chuck it out there. I'm going to say it. I'm going to say what everyone wants to say is, did it all go wrong since he left Frank Warren? Because to be perfectly honest, that's what it looks like.
Yeah, I think if you look at the history of the fighters that do leave Frank Warren, barring the elite ones like Ricky Hatton, Nassim Hamid and Joe Calzaghe, they've tried going a different way. In terms of, if you look at Ricky Burns, his last 3-4 fights, he's been really off par.
Well, has he though? That's the point.
I think he had.
That's the point I'm making. He won a great fight in winning the title from that Rocky Jara. Was
it Martin?
Rocky Martinez. Yeah, he did very well. Okay, but when he was managed and promoted, when he's promoted by Frank Warren, it seems that he was having a much better time his title defences than he did after he flipped over to Matchroom. Now, I'm not suggesting that Frank Warren has better relationships with the WBO. I'm not suggesting that at all, and that's why maybe he had defences that were more, maybe easier for him to look good in. But you'd have to say that the moment he left the Frank Warren, come from under Frank Warren's wing, it just all went terribly wrong. Cuban kid almost beat him, then gave up for some reason. Then he had that fight against Beltran where he got his jaw broken. And then the Crawford fight, and obviously Crawford's proved himself to be a quality piece. It's like, who's looking after Ricky Burns? Certainly not Ricky Burns.
I think he's found, he knows that he's not amongst the elite at that weight.
Does he know that?
I think he does now. I think
because I don't think he knew it previously. I mean, I've always thought to myself he's done really well to win the fights he's won. And then he started sort of talking. He didn't get as bad as talking about himself in the third person. But after he lost that Beltran fight, he was talking after it, and he was saying, "I've not fought particularly well in my last couple of fights." But I thought he fought brilliantly in his last couple of fights. And what should have happened did happen, which was he got beaten by Beltran.
Yeah,
Really, let's be honest.
yeah.
He was beaten hands down by the Cuban kid, and then obviously Crawford, you know, beat him relatively easy. Couldn't do anything with him. Excuses aside. So, turning it on its head, then, Eddie Hearns, is he burning up a lot of English fighters to service the paymaster, which is Sky TV?
Yeah, it could be seen that way. I mean, the thing with
British fighters,
yeah,
yeah.
the thing with Hearn is he's doing a good job, so to speak. But I don't think.
Well, you've been on one of his shows.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
but there's a difference, isn't there, between bringing on fighters and prize fighter?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I think he knows what he's doing to a degree. I mean, he's clearly promoted some of the, you know, already the biggest boxing fights in the history. I think of UK, the Wembley fight with Froch.
I'd say that.
But
Yeah.
I mean, there is a huge but. It's the fact of building. He's good. I think he can build a career, but it's career progression. I don't think when they get to a certain level, like Ricky Burns, I don't think he knows how to manoeuvre them into the next position where Warren kind of does. He'll miss an opponent. I don't think Terence Crawford would have been around if Frank Warren was managing him, because I think
He'd have found a way to
he would have found a way
it.
to navigate maybe into as big a fight, but with someone that suits Burns' style. You know, one thing I noticed at the weekend, and we all think we're boxing experts when we're sort of sitting on our couch, but was the simple fact of when he covers up Burns, he, you know, for a world level fighter, so to speak, is he stands up with his gloves here, just letting a short, stocky guy unload on him. You know, these sort of things amongst an elite fighter shouldn't be happening.
Do you think ever since he got his jaw broken, do you think it's put him in a bit of a psychological box? In fairness, I mean, because he's as brave as a lion.
Oh no, he's brave as they come. He's still a fantastic fighter. I don't think it has. I just think that the guys that Hearns put in front of him have been that they've not researched, and they've not been the sort of opponents that Ricky Burns should be fighting.
Okay, so you look at the fight. You take the Bellew fight when he went over and fought Stevenson. Now, obviously, it's an opportunity. As the promoter of Tony Bellew, should Eddie Hearns turn around and say no to that opportunity, or should he turn around and say, "Oh look, I think we'll wait a little while"? How long can you wait though, in a division like light heavyweight? You know what I mean? You've got to take your opportunities, haven't you?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say you've got to take your opportunities. I mean,
Do you know what I think the real problem is? I think the real problem is that there's too much emphasis on world titles for some of these fighters. Because I think if it was me, I would be trying to build the equity or the value in the European title again. Because I remember years ago, you used to have like the WBC and WBA, and the European title back then was like a big thing. It was like a worthy thing. And they used to go to British on the European, then boom, into that world title fight if they could get it. And historically, I'm talking about when I was younger, like your Jim Watt, Maurice Hope, fighters of that Alaminta, British fighters, in all honesty, used to win the title and they'd lose it in a couple of defences. It was like a miracle. If Jim White had maybe 4 or 5 defences, I can't remember what it was, but they never used to hold the fights out because there weren't that many champions.
No.
Now there are loads of titles, and obviously you've got these guys who are being thrown into world titles when, you know, are they really of that level? Are they really good enough to be in that ring fighting for that title? I'm not too sure.
well, it's like the Cleverly Kovalev. I think that was a massive example, wasn't it? Cleverly had, I think he got given the title. Was that right? He was meant to fight Jürgen
Yeah, I
Bremer,
think that's right, yeah.
and then he had a couple of soft defences. And I think Warren was saying that he didn't want the Kovalev fight, and Cleverly's team were like, "No, we want it to prove ourselves." And look what happened there. Was it 4-round demolition? Just totally outclassed and outpunched.
Yeah. Well, I think, Frank Warren, obviously, there's
yeah.
nothing you can tell him about boxing, I wouldn't have thought, but interesting stuff. But it's going to be interesting. But when he first came on the scene, and he used to run a show, I think it was called Friday Night Fights, there were a couple of lads that he threw in, Frank Warren, when he was learning the trade. Price was one of them, light heavyweight Liverpool kid, he got bombed out.
I think nowadays as well we got to go back to like the fights when people, like for me at the moment a good fight would be Rocky Fielding v Callum Smith. going back, making sure the guys get well paid. You don't necessarily have to have a world title on the line to get big viewing figures. If you look at Gatti Ward, I mean, the first fight wasn't for a title. I don't believe.
I don't think any of them were for a title.
But massive viewing audience. The fighters got paid well.
Yeah, but this comes back to the other thing as well, is that you can only have those kind of events when the lads themselves are managed properly. I mean, like I was just talking about then, you could go back years ago and people knew who Kirkland Lang was. They knew who Mo Hussein were, because they had you had sports night, you had Friday night fights, midweek boxing, and all that sort of stuff. I sometimes wonder, I know we've got Box Nation and stuff like that, which I think is fantastic, but I sometimes wonder if the fighters are as widely known as they used to be by the general public.
Right, not if I suppose it's down to terrestrial TV, and
terrestrial TV was so powerful
happening,
back then. That's right. And the other thing you always talked about then was actually bringing fighters on. I mean, when Michael Watson was being brought on by Mickey Duff. I mean, Mickey Duff used to have like Bozer Edwards, and all of them. I think what was another one, and I think they used to get a really good grounding. They really had to literally learn their trade before they were thrown in at the deep end, and they were generally really ready for those opportunities. Which again, like Purdy, for instance, getting a world title fight.
Yeah, I mean, for me that was wrong in so many ways.
So that's what I'm saying. Was that really ticking a box for Sky, or was that ticking a box for Lee Purdy? I'd say, a boxer very rarely turns around and says no, but who's the geezer in the background saying, I don't think so, Lee, this ain't going to work for us, because we'll wait a little bit longer for a better opportunity. You know what I mean? Is the paymaster driving the decisions for the fighter?
Yeah, but I think any fighter, though, being a boxer myself, I think that if you're given an opportunity where the money's better than that you've had in your previous fights, you as a fighter, you do believe that you can beat most people out there, if not world level, when you get to a certain level.
But isn't that's the point? That's what I'm saying about. That's what a great manager's meant to do, though, isn't it?
Who's Purdy's manager?
Well, this is the question. Who's the promoter? Who's the manager? In England, you've got this thing. It's very hard to identify who they are.
But
but the point I'm making is who's making the real decisions for the fighter? Is it the promoter? Is it the manager? Is it the manager promoter? Obviously we know in the smaller hall stuff, the fighter's manager is generally the promoter as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's obviously a conflict, because if you're a young kid and you're selling a lot of tickets for someone, is he really going to burn you up? And because when you develop a fighter's career, you take risks. But are you really going to take a risk with a kid who's constantly paying you 5, 6, 7, 8 grand? How many risks do you want to take with that? And that's the thing. You look at someone like Frank Bruno. When he won the world title, I think Mickey Duff said they should have given the championship to his manager. Which is, it's a bit rude, but what he really meant was the guy had been well managed. Henry Cooper was well managed. Henry Cooper was never let anywhere near Joe Frazier because his management knew he wouldn't get anywhere. Not when he not just lose the fight, he'd get destroyed, because styles make fights. And that to me is what proper management is, because Henry Cooper had basically a 60-year career. Frank Bruno will have a massive career for the rest of his life. He'll always be a face. And I think that sometimes people take the dough when they shouldn't take it.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, in the case of Purdy, obviously, I think he's injured now. But I think he was managed, to have a beating that he took off Alexander, and he was very brave. He then went into a real hard European title fight, and subsequently is now unable to box. I don't think it's anyone's fault. I think boxing is boxing. But, again, different scenarios, 2 hard fights back to back, struggling to make weight. I think, people do need to look at the bigger picture. Yeah,
and maybe try and actually have a navigate through to maybe better opportunities that may be coming a little bit further down the road.
Yeah.
Rather than taking oh, Jesus, look, there's a bit of money, boom, we'll take that immediately. Because I always think about, a big fighter for me was always Danny Williams. Danny Williams to me was like a brilliant, brilliant fighter. But that Klitschko fight just wasn't a fight he could win. And what's more, he went in there and when he went in there, he did look like he'd been trained for speed. He looked like he'd been trained for power. I said, what have you been trained for power for? You're not big enough to get this. You need speed to get to this kid. At least if you're going to go in and have that fight, at least go and have a brilliant 3 or 4 round fight where you might get a return and get paid again. But no one's brave enough to turn around, it seems to me, and say, do you know, I don't think you can win this fight, so we better look really fantastic losing it so we can get it again.
Yeah.
A bit like Maidana. You know, look, if you know, let's be honest, I don't think a lot of people in their heart of hearts really believe that, but he put up a good fight, he might get another fight, probably get paid get 10 million next time.
Yeah.
Because he put up a great fight. And that's what I'm talking about. No one wants to have those hard conversations, but it's about strategy, isn't it? It's about making more money, staying healthy.
Staying healthy is a big thing, isn't it?
It's health. I've always said to you, haven't I? Health, wealth, glory. But ultimately, you want to. If you might get a big hit and you might get paid, I don't know, whatever, you get paid like 40, 50 grand to fight for this world title if you're Lee Purdy. I don't know.
Yeah.
But how much does it cost you?
Yeah.
How much does that bit of dough cost you?
Yeah.
You know, and that's with management, because you come here, boom, I'm not having it. We'll have it another time. So it's a quality piece and we're moving forward.
Yeah,
in a
which
different
he
way.
is. I think, again, he's only 24, 25, so it wasn't as if...
No, I'm with you. I think he's a quality fighter,
yeah.
but why sacrifice him because
there's an opportunity.
Because there's an opportunity.
Yeah.
That's exactly the point I'm trying to make. Anyway, enough of such things. Been a bit controversial this week. Enough of such things. Let's have a chat with Fat Nige.
Protein only diets. Are they a sensible option for the training athlete? It's harder for the body to extract energy from protein than it is from carbs. It heats the body up, and that creates what we call the thermogenic effect. Now, you will burn fat on a protein only diet, but doesn't it make more sense to actually do a controlled, balanced diet, incorporating good carbs, keep ourselves closer to our fighting weight? That way we eradicate the need for drastic, energy-sapping methods of losing weight for our fight. Remember, fight strong, not wrong. I'm Fat Nige.
Fat Nige, you've got a nutrition tip from Fat Nige. Great bit of advice there from Fat Nige. I think I'll start taking that on board myself. Fight at the weekend. Michael Katsidis, Graham L. I'm pulled in 2 different directions. I know a lot of people say, oh, you shouldn't let fighters do this and you shouldn't let fighters do that, but they are fighters. It's what they do. And if they've been passed medically fit to fight, what can you do?
Yeah, I'm personally against this fight. I mean, Katsidis may be a level. I mean, Graham Earl, he comes across as a nice enough guy, but he seems to me that he's struggling to put a sentence together, never mind a punch combination.
Okay, go back to the Steve Collins fight. Steve Collins was that proposed fight with Roy Jones Jr. And, a lot of people, they're too this and they're too that. But, and I know what I'm going to say is a bit controversial. I know people don't want to hear it. But they are fighters, it's what they do. I know you could turn around and say, they've got to be protected for themselves, but they're also grown adults, Well, they are.
Yeah, but you can't look at it like that. I mean, just because someone believes they can do something, it doesn't mean they necessarily should be doing it.
Yeah, but
I mean, that is a wrong on so
you,
many levels.
You could turn around and but the trouble you got with boxing is intent. Everyone says, the intent is to injure people. All sports are full of intent and danger. I don't even think professional sports are about fitness. If you're tracing around the track in a car, you fly off and burn to death, yeah? They put the term around and say, but it weren't. Well, it actually was someone's intent. It was someone's intent to create a course that was challenging for them drivers. A byproduct of that intent was that some kid got smashed to bits in a wall or burnt to death. A 3-day eventing course, yeah, challenging. A byproduct of the intent of making the course challenging is that people fall off of horses and have their bloody necks broken.
Yeah,
right?
You don't see too many 50-year-old rugby players getting a team together playing another bunch of.
I'll tell you something,
players.
you do find a lot of old rugby players getting smashed to bits in silly games they shouldn't have, but no one stops them because of intent.
Yeah, not professional rugby players.
No, I know, but the
Yeah.
point I'm saying is that professional sports have inherent dangers. Look, I always say that boxing's an uber sport. And I describe uber sports as these, that if you can climb onto it or into it, and you might not climb off of it or out of it the way you went into it, that's an uber sport. And boxing, as we know more than probably most, is a ridiculously dangerous sport. And it's ridiculous when you're young, it's ridiculously dangerous when you're
I
old.
think it's more dangerous when you're old, to be fair.
Well, is it? Because the geezer that's hitting you is going to be older and slower too. You know, the ambiguity of it. But the point I'm saying is you could play devil's advocate here.
Yeah, the levels. Katsidis has been boxing at a level, and I think his last fight was less than a year ago. Graham Earl, 7 years ago.
I totally hear what you say. I'm not saying that.
Shouldn't be happening.
I'm not saying that it doesn't challenge you, but ultimately it does. There's a bigger argument for me here. There's a bigger argument for me, and it's about individual freedoms. That's what it is. And let's be frank, these boys are both professional boxers who make money because people sell tickets or they sell it to TV, and these two lads are getting paid. Someone bought it. Someone's bought it. If they've sold the ticket, someone's bought it.
Yeah, I'd buy to watch them both jump out of an aeroplane without a parachute.
That seems a tiny bit cruel.
No, but it's the same thing, isn't it? You're like, would
Well,
you
not
buy?
really,
What would you
not-
buy
not-
it? And it's up to them. To me, for someone to do that, they're mad, aren't they? They're mad to jump out without a parachute. In boxing, Graham Earl has got to be bordering on mad to want to go in there. I don't know, 10 years after the first fight, how brutal it was. It's going to be damaging.
Mate, well, you just said earlier that, well, I'm not going to quote you. Boxing.
Please do.
No, but you know, we've both met a lot of fighters who you can see that they've had a tough career, and they're still boxing because they passed medicals and bits and bobs like that. And I know that. I mean, the other lad apparently has failed a medical. This is what the thing is. Katsidis failed a scan, and you know, I'm like you. You've got to keep boxing as safe as possible. But if they have actually fulfilled the obligation of passing medicals, have you really got the right to stop
but
them?
you'll look at what has he passed a medical with the British Boxing Board of Control? Is that where he's passed his medical?
If the only boxing that took place anywhere in the world was in Britain, that would be an issue. But it's not, because it isn't the only place.
Well, yeah, but there's different rules and regulations. There's a Malta sanctioning body that comes over, and you know as well as yourself, there's a list of fighters that have not been passed fit by the Boxing Board of Control that are on these shows at York Hall. To me, I think it's wrong.
Well, I mean, I can't deny that I agree with us. Like I say, to me, there's a bigger issue here, which is an issue of basically individuals' rights. I totally agree with what you're saying on another level. And yeah, if it was the way that you could say, boom, no more for you. Yeah, you can have a little bit more of it. No more for you. But I do think it's a tricky one because the inherent dangers of boxing, and the other thing is, a lot of these guys, their self-worth is totally built in the fact that they're fighters, and you take that away. I don't know. I know what you're saying. It's a fair point, and you make it well, my friend. Ruslan Chagayev fighting this kid Oquendo. I mean, there's no bets out there this weekend, is it? I think Chagayev's 8-1 on. I mean, Oquendo, is he been beaten by anyone he's ever thought that was of any quality?
No, I think Chagayev for a comfortable points win, if not stoppage.
Late stoppage, Yeah. Okay, and I think we're going to wrap it there actually this week. We unfortunately didn't have Angry Coach this week because he got married, so we couldn't film him. He was absolutely over moderately joyed, but which is good for him, isn't it? Because he's angry. He is genuinely quite an angry chap. But he'll be back next week, and we'll also be bringing you another feature next week, which is our competition feature with Eastern Bloc Bimbo. We think you'll enjoy that. Until then, from Jack Morris and me, Berth, have a good week.